Ellen Miller, and welcome back to the Child Connection channel. Thanks for being here. And today I have a story about what can happen, what actually could be possible when you're able to tap into your presence and how you show up with your child, even in some of their worst moments. And I want to be clear, when I share a story, it is not because I want someone else to replicate and do the exact same thing, because you are different from me. And how I am today is different than how I was yesterday. So I don't even replicate everything that I do in the same way every time. And I don't replicate what I do with one child with the other necessarily. So when I share a story, just try to get the lesson that's coming through and see if there is a way that you might be able to incorporate that lesson into your parenting interactions with your children. So it might look different, it might sound different, but you might be able to incorporate something that you learned from my story into your own parenting. So what am I talking about? Just going back to the basics, that your presence is how you show up when you interact with your child. So are you showing up really calm, really open, really engaged, or are you showing up to like put the stop on something, or to squash something down, or to eliminate something? Your presence is how you show up with your child. So the story I want to share is about one of those moments when, thank goodness, I was able to really tap into my presence and show up in a really supportive way when my daughter was having a really tough time. And now that I think about it, I can't even remember the entire context. But what often happens is when my daughter has reached her limit, and when she, moves into that zone of feeling dysregulated, the way she expresses that often is very vocally, verbally, sometimes saying things, yelling things, and ultimately just screaming. And that's not easy to witness. It's not easy to stand there and observe your child screaming their head off, sometimes with hurtful language, sometimes just loud noise. But I've learned that that's her process. So now I'm able to expect it. It's not surprising. It's still not comfortable, but it's not surprising. And I know that it's part of her process. I don't see her screaming and yelling things as an indicator that she's an unstable child. I don't see it as, that she's going down the road of, some really intense disorder of some kind. I see it as part of her process that she needs to go through so that she can get back to being regulated and being calm and being able to have a conversation about whatever is happening. So part of being present with your child might be stepping into that place of accepting however it is that they are displaying and expressing themselves in the height of their emotions or the depth of their emotions. So on this particular day, whatever happened beforehand, I can't remember, but the moment that I remember being able to actually support my daughter was when she screamed something at me, went into her room and slammed the door and just kept screaming her head off. And part of me wanted to say, shut up, I don't want to hear this. But that's the reactive part of me. The fully present, committed, accepting part of me said, if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. And I'm not going to shortcut your process. I'm not going to interrupt your process. I can recognize what this is and I can be okay with it for right now, and I'll be here. So and I'm laughing to myself because why would I be the person that tells my daughter to stop screaming and stop vocalizing? Because actually, I remember when she was born and when I was in labor and delivery and birthing my child, turns out that I was vocalizing some things too. And at a high volume. And I remember the nurses saying in their very kind, gentle way, you can take the energy from your vocalization and put it into pushing. I had a lot of other thoughts in response to that suggestion, but I understood what they were saying. But also, I was like, there's nobody else having a baby. All of you are awake because you're working. I'm not disrupting anybody. Let me scream. Anyway, total side note. Back to me not telling my daughter not to scream and allowing her to scream. And what I did was I probably did let myself into her room, and she probably wanted me to go away, but I let her know non-verbally, not saying anything, but really just with how my body was and how my whole demeanor was, that I wasn't going to go away because I truly believed that she needed me to be with her to go through this process. And so I think what ended up happening that time, because this does happen on more than once, that time I just listened to her scream, and I think I may have asked, do you need to scream even more? And she might have, I think she kept screaming. And then she kept screaming, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's actually not going to stop screaming. And then I noticed in myself that I was starting to get agitated, and I said, you know what, I'm going to scream with you. And so she was screaming out here, and I was screaming too. And by me joining her in screaming, it created a whole different dynamic. I wasn't screaming at her, I was just screaming with her. And by joining her in that experience, it's like she went into a different mode. And so she kept screaming and I kept screaming. And it's like she was checking to see how long I was going to go with her. And by her observing me screaming and having her own reaction to that, that pulled her out of like the rage zone, which is what started the screaming. And it brought her into almost like, I'll just say hysterical, sort of manic zone, where she was still being loud, but then the screams turned into laughter. And so she was still like breathing heavily and being really loud, but instead of like screaming and raging, she was laughing. And then I started laughing too. And I honestly, I can't distinguish if she was just laughing at me because what she was watching me do was funny to her, I don't know, or if it was just her body's way of continuing to process the big emotions and shifting from screaming to laughing, which is another way of releasing big emotions. Whatever it was, I don't know. It shifted and it changed. And so then we were laughing together, and then we kind of simmered down and kind of settled down. And she just looked at me like, I don't know what's going on here, but you're not mad at me. And I looked back at her and I'm like, I'm not really sure what's going on here either, but no, I'm not mad at you. I just want to find out, is this complete? Are you finished? Is there more? Where are we right now? And so we kind of simmered down and just had a little moment of like really just checking in. Like, do you need to scream more? It's okay. Do we need to do something different? And so I think at that point, I may have like invited her into a hug or to sit down in my lap like she used to do when she was a baby. And then we were just kind of together, not doing anything, not talking about anything for a minute or two. And then I let her start with telling me about whatever else was going on. And this is kind of the trend where, something may have happened at school during the day. And then the breaking point is something different that happens in the car with her brother, with me, something else. That's the breaking point. So then we have that explosion of emotion. And once we get through that explosion, we are able to get back to what the real thing was that led to that big explosion. So that is a story that I use as a celebration of when I was able to just be fully present through all of those moments. That was a roller coaster. And that I could be there with my daughter when she really needed outside support. I'm imagining if I just let her stay in her room and scream her head off, eventually we may have been able to get to the same place. but I don't think it would have felt as good for her. I think it may have taken a whole lot longer. And she may have just continued to stay worked up about how she was expressing her big feelings. And then she may have had other feelings about how she was expressing those big feelings. So by me being able to join her and show her, I'm okay with you screaming your head off right now. In fact, I bet it feels so good. I'm going to join you and do the same thing right now. And to move through that, then she doesn't have to worry about if that's wrong, if that's bad, if it's too out of control, because I'm there with her. So that's the lesson. Is That's the lesson. If you're able to find those moments, it's not every day, it's not all of the time, for sure. But when you can find those moments of accepting your child's process and really just being present for them, with them, that's a win. And even though that moment lasted maybe 10 minutes, I really do believe that the impact of what she learned about herself, what she learned about her emotions, what she learned about our relationship is a lot bigger than what just happened in those 10 minutes. So, I mean, do I wish I could replicate that every single time? Yes. Do I? No. So it doesn't always happen perfectly. It doesn't all happen as smoothly or with as much fun. At some point during that day, I must have like really had some good things happening where I was like, no matter what she does, no matter what they do, I'm going to be able to have fun. I'm going to be able to be okay with it. So yeah, that speaks to a little bit different zone of parenting, but it is possible to be fully present and support your child through whatever they are experiencing. So I hope that this story is helpful, insightful, inspiring in some way. And I would love to hear from you if you've been able to have even just a glimmer of a teeny tiny little moment where you recognize, yeah, I'm here. There's this big emotional storm happening with my child, but I am here and I am present. I would love to hear if you've been able to tap into that. And if not, then let me know. What do you think? What do you think might help you get into that zone? So leave a comment below, and I can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, take care. Thanks so much for being here.